Imagine a Europe where, every single summer, the thermometer climbs to an astonishing 50 degrees Celsius. This is not some distant science fiction scenario. It is a future we must contemplate and prepare for. Such extreme heat, once a rarity, could become an annual trial, a yearly siege of scorching sun and blistering air. Ancient cities, built for milder climates, would suddenly find themselves on the front line of a new and daunting environmental challenge. The familiar rhythm of European life, with its bustling summer festivals and leisurely afternoons in sun-dappled squares, would be fundamentally and irrevocably altered by this relentless, searing heat. This intense heat is more than just a number on a weather forecast. It represents a profound shift in our planet's climate system. For centuries, Europe has been defined by its temperate seasons, a gentle cycle that has shaped its cultures, its architecture, and its very soul. But a yearly heatwave of this magnitude would shatter that long-held identity. It would force us to see our world differently, to understand that the stability we once took for granted is fragile. The sun, long a symbol of life and joy, would become a source of genuine danger, its rays carrying not just warmth but a serious threat to our way of life. The arrival of such a predictable yet devastating heatwave would mark a turning point. It would be a clear, undeniable signal that our world is changing in profound ways. We would no longer speak of unusual weather events, but of a new normal, a term that feels inadequate to describe the severity of the situation. Every aspect of society, from the way we build our homes to the hours we keep for work and school, would need to be re-examined through this new lens of extreme heat. Preparing for this future is not just a matter of comfort, it is a matter of survival for all living things. Our connection to the natural world would be tested as never before. The gentle landscapes of Europe, from the rolling green hills of Ireland to the vast forests of Germany, have evolved over millennia in a climate that is now under threat. A 50-degree heat wave would act like a fever for the continent, stressing every ecosystem and pushing many to their absolute limits. We are part of this intricate web of life, and what affects the smallest insect or the tallest tree will ultimately affect us all. The great challenge is to understand these connections and act to protect them and ourselves from the coming heat. When temperatures soar to 50 degrees Celsius, our own bodies are placed under immense strain. This is not the pleasant warmth of a sunny day. It is a dangerous, oppressive heat that can lead to serious health problems like heat stroke and dehydration, particularly for the very young and the elderly. Our daily routines would have to change dramatically. The simple act of walking outside during the middle of the day would become a risky activity. People might adopt a siesta-like lifestyle, similar to those in the world's hottest deserts, resting indoors during the peak heat and venturing out only in the cooler hours of the early morning or late evening. Our homes, designed for much cooler weather, would struggle to provide refuge. Many older European buildings with thick stone walls, once excellent at keeping cool, may not be enough to fend off such prolonged extreme heat. The demand for electricity would skyrocket as millions of air conditioners turn on at once, straining power grids to their breaking point and causing widespread blackouts. This would leave countless people without cooling when they need it most, turning apartments and houses into dangerous ovens. We would need to rethink how we build and retrofit our homes, making them true sanctuaries from the heat. The very fabric of our cities would be threatened. Asphalt roads could soften and melt, and railway tracks could buckle under the intense sun, bringing transportation to a standstill. Public transport systems, not built to operate in such conditions, might fail, leaving people stranded. The safety of our infrastructure, from bridges to buildings, would be a constant concern, as materials expand and contract in ways they were never designed to. Urban life as we know it, with its constant movement and activity, would slow to a crawl, silenced by the overwhelming power of the sun. Life would become a daily exercise in avoiding the outdoors. To cope, cities would need to transform. We would see a rise in cooling centers, public air-conditioned spaces where vulnerable people could find relief. Workplaces and schools would have to adjust their hours, perhaps shifting to a nocturnal schedule during the hottest months of the year. The entire rhythm of urban life would be dictated by the thermometer. Our bustling 24-hour cities would fall quiet during the day, only to come alive under the relative coolness of the moon and stars. This is a profound change to the social fabric that has defined European urban centers for generations. The impact of such heat on the land would be catastrophic. Agriculture, the foundation of our food supply, would face an unprecedented crisis. Many staple crops like wheat and corn cannot survive in 50-degree heat. Fields would wither and turn to dust, leading to massive crop failures year after year. Farmers would be forced to abandon traditional crops, searching for more heat-resistant alternatives, but the transition would be difficult and uncertain. The lush green patchwork of European farmland, a sight that has nourished people for centuries, could transform into a barren, parched landscape. Water, the lifeblood of our continent, would become incredibly scarce. Rivers like the Rhine and the Danube would shrink to mere trickles, their water levels too low for ships to pass, crippling trade and transport. Water shortages would become the norm, forcing strict rationing for homes and farms alike. At the same time, the risk of wildfires would be extraordinarily high. Our magnificent forests, from the pine woods of Scandinavia to the ancient oaks of England, would become tinderboxes, ready to erupt into uncontrollable infernos with the slightest spark, destroying habitats and releasing vast amounts of carbon into the atmosphere. The animal kingdom would suffer immensely. Wildlife, not adapted to such extreme temperatures, would struggle to find water and shade. Birds could fall from the sky, and fish would die in warm, oxygen-deprived rivers. Many species, unable to migrate or adapt quickly enough, would face local extinction. The delicate balance of ecosystems would be shattered. The familiar sounds of the European countryside, the buzzing of bees, the song of birds, would fade, replaced by an eerie silence. Our planet's rich biodiversity would be another casualty of the relentless heat. This environmental crisis would also reshape our economies. Industries that depend on nature, such as farming, fishing, and forestry, would be decimated, leading to widespread job losses in rural communities. The tourism industry, a vital part of many European economies, would also suffer. Who would want to visit historic cities or beautiful coastlines when it is dangerously hot outside? The economic and social consequences would be profound, creating new challenges for governments and communities already struggling to cope with the direct impacts of the heat on health and infrastructure. Faced with such a monumental challenge, we are not without hope, but we must act decisively. Our response must be twofold. We must adapt our lives to the heat that is already coming, and we must work to prevent the climate from getting even worse. Adaptation in our cities could mean painting roofs white to reflect sunlight and planting millions of trees to create shade and cool the air. We could create more green spaces and water features like canals and fountains, which have a natural cooling effect. Our urban planning must prioritize shade, ventilation, and heat-resilient infrastructure for all citizens. Our relationship with water will need a complete overhaul. We must become masters of water conservation, capturing every drop of rain and recycling wastewater far more efficiently. On our farms, we may need to shift from thirsty crops to those like sorghum or millet, which are better suited to arid conditions. New innovative farming techniques, such as vertical farming in controlled indoor environments, could become essential to ensuring a stable food supply. Protecting and restoring our wetlands and forests will also be crucial, as these ecosystems act as natural sponges, holding onto water and regulating local climates. Leaders and communities must work together. Governments must invest heavily in upgrading infrastructure, from power grids to public transport, to withstand extreme heat. They need to create robust public health plans to protect the most vulnerable during heat waves. Communities can play their part by setting up neighborhood support networks to check on elderly and isolated residents. Education is key. Everyone needs to understand the risks of extreme heat and know how to stay safe. This is a shared challenge that requires a shared, coordinated response from every level of society. Ultimately, surviving and thriving in this hotter future requires a new respect for our planet. The annual 50-degree heat wave is a stark warning, a message from the natural world that we have pushed its systems to a breaking point. By embracing sustainable energy, restoring our natural ecosystems, and redesigning our communities to work with nature rather than against it, we can build a more resilient world. The path ahead is difficult, but it is one we must walk together. The future of Europe and indeed of all life on Earth depends on the choices we make today.